Welcome to chess, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, so as you guys do know, I think everybody knows, we are playing the final tournament of the Champions Chess Tour. As you guys know, the tournament started in November. So, the Champions Chess Tour initially started in November, and we are now just finally at the end of September are playing the finals of that. So, I'm not sure about all the details. I just kind of got, into looking at the games and following stuff. So it looks like they're playing one person versus one person like per day. They played they're playing 4 games today. Shakhriyar Mamedyarov versus Wesley. So, and they're just kind of going back and forth. So I think it's paired, and pretty much everybody is going to play everybody per day. And they're kind of, get into a final at the ultimate end. I haven't found out yet, but as always, for my people in the Philippines, I will say mabuhay to you. Kamusta na aking magkaibigan? Magandang ro. Appreciate you guys very much for coming by. Maraming salamat po sa nanonood ng aking video. Masaya komikiri kay muli. Hello, you lit. Appreciate you guys very much for coming by. We are going to go ahead and see who is malakas in this one and all of the other games. Anybody who is coming from Azerbaijan, I will say salam to you and chak sagol. Appreciate you guys very much for stopping by. It's really crazy because I just did a Shaq versus Wesley game last night actually. And what do you know, the first game is a Shaq versus game. So it is crazy interesting. But if you guys are ready to go, let's take a look and see what we have for this game. So we do have D4. Knight comes to F6. We got C4, and then we have E6. We don't have a Slav. We have a regular Queen's Gambit. We got Knight to F3. We have D5. Knight comes to C3. And then we do have C5. So we do have the Queen's Gambit decline, and it is the Tarrasch. Black is basically just saying, I'm trying to, push on your structure as much as you're pushing on mine. It does give white a slight advantage, but, it's nothing crazy to write home about. So we do have pawn takes D5, pawn takes D4. Queen takes D4, and, every now and then you might see like that knight coming to C6 thing, because the pawn is pinned. But because this knight is protecting the queen, we don't have that now. So we do have pawn takes D5, and then we have bishop to G5. This is a very aggressive way of playing. Each side is pretty much, still pretty equal. You're just basically saying that you want to undermine, this knight. Because it is protecting this pawn. So, you might have some rook coming to D1. So, I mean, the position can get pretty dicey if you're not, doing what you need to do to protect. Bishop does come to E7. Okay. Bishop does come to E7. And we do see E3. Now, it might kind of seem like, from looking at the position as it sits, that you can just, eliminate the knight on F6, the bishop takes back, and then you might be able to take the queen, or you might be able to take that pawn on D5 ultimately. But that is actually a horrible blunder, and I'll show you exactly why. So after bishop to E7, if we do go into bishop taking F6, queen taking D5, everything is all good until you see the move bishop takes C3 with check. And so unfortunately now you have actually just undermined the protection of this queen. And you will be losing it. So you have to be very careful, at all times, especially whenever you have a piece that holds another piece, that it cannot be undermined. That is actually a pretty tough tactic to see sometimes. So you might end up, a few moves deep looking at this. So don't do that. Play E3. So we do have castles by black. Bishop comes to E2, and then knight comes to C6. And anytime you have the queen sitting on D4, you almost always, probably 98% of the time, are going to see knight coming to C6. Because this is just developing the knight to a nice square, and you're inconveniencing this queen. So we do see queen back to D3. We got H6. Bishop comes back to H4. We got queen to B6. We have castles by white. Rook comes to D8 for black. We have rook F to D1. And the interesting thing about this particular position is this is not the first time that Mamedyarov and So have gotten into this position. Back in the St. Louis Rapid and Blitz not too long ago, they actually played these exact lines. And what we actually saw in that game was bishop to E6. which is the strongest. It's about the strongest move in the position. But in this particular game, we actually see the novelty of the game, which is queen takes b2. And I mean, queen taking b2 is slightly risky, but it's actually not that bad. It's something that you can actually play out of as black. Rook is going to come. Rook 8 is going to come to b1. We have queen up to a3. Bishop takes f6. Bishop takes f6. And then we do have knight to d5. You know, we are going to be, you know, throwing the knight on f6. And we're going to be checking the king. So we're not worried about the fact that the rook or the knight is currently pinned. But the queen is undefended for black. So something has to be done about that. So queen takes on a2. We see knight takes f6 with check. Pawn takes f6, and then we do have pretty much the only move. There are other moves in the position, but this is really one of the only moves that you can make to kind of hold everything, you know, because this queen is attacked. This bishop is attacked, so, you know, you kind of have some things that you're doing here. So knight coming to d4 is definitely one of the best ways to protect your position. We have bishop coming to e6. Rook takes b7. We see rook down to d6, and then we do have... You have to be very careful when you're making these moves because you are subject to possible back rank stuff. But we do see rook to d2 in this position. And, you know, you have the ability to either just back the rook up, even back this rook up, or, you know, even back the bishop up if you want to cover your back rank. So, you know, you are good. You are placing an attack on this queen. And we do see queen down to a1, and then rook does come back to b1, covering the check. So the queen comes up to a5. We see rook d to d1. You know, as I was telling you guys before, when you do retreat a piece after its attack, you want to try to put it on an active square. So queen coming to a5 is attacking, is placing a threat on this rook. So it does restrict the movement of this queen. It does force white to have to make some type of a move to protect that rook because your movability now is, you know, kind of put in jeopardy. So we do see rook d down to d1. Knight takes d4. We have pawn takes d4. We have pawn takes d4. Because, you know, of course you couldn't take with the queen. So, you know, preferably we'd want to take with the queen. But we do have pawn. So, you know, black has forced, you know, white to get, you know, at least a little concession with their structure. So we got rook a to d8. And then we have h4. And we actually see queen to f5 in the position. But it might kind of seem like, man, can't black just literally take this pawn on d4? It looks like it's free. You know, the queen would have to give itself up for that. Well, it's actually, that's not what would happen, but you actually can take the pawn if you want to. It's actually suggested to do that. Rook taking d4 would actually, queen would come to g3 with check. You know, the queen can't come in cover because this pawn is protecting. So you would see king to h7. Rook would take d4. Rook would take d4. And then you'd see bishop to d3 with check. And this is actually like dead even. But you definitely do have some threats here. You definitely can't, you know, be moving the king any type of way because this... actually, you can. Actually, no, you can. So... you can kind of block. But as you guys can see, this king would be in like a crazy box. So you'd be retreating and you'd be, you know, getting attacked further. So it's kind of iffy. So we do see f5 and then the rook would come up to b8. And this is like one of the main moves that you're having to deal with because you are putting this king in a pretty nice box. But like I said, we did see h4 and then queen came to h5. And so queen comes to g3 with check. The queen goes back to g6 to cover. We see queen to f4. White doesn't necessarily want to trade queens. Queen comes back to f5, offering another trade. And then we see queen taking h6. Rook takes d4. Rook b to c1. You know, we're not worried about all the trades down here. We'll be good to go. Queen comes to e5. We do see rook takes d4. Rook takes d4. And then we have bishop to h5. And... I mean, I personally don't like bishop to h6 or bishop to h5. It's not really a move that's doing anything. I mean, you're not really attacking this pawn. I mean, this bishop is protecting. So it actually just kind of wastes a move. One of the things that you want to be paying attention to if you're white in this position is this pawn over here. So you definitely have like some more freeing type of moves like rook to b1 or even bishop to a6. Because this actually can become a very dangerous pawn. So bishop over to h5 is not doing much. It's kind of setting up a trap that black is not going to fall into. After bishop to h5, I mean, you're not going to see this. because then the bishop is going to take here with check, and then the king will take, and then you're going to be winning a rook for free. And this is just something that black is not going to do. Wesley Sells not doing this. So, yes. Rook takes on d4, like I said, bishop to h5. And then we actually see rook back to d8. But there was actually a5 possible in the position. I mean, you do have this passed pawn. So, I mean, passed pawns must be pushed. So, if at all you can ever push a pawn, you definitely want to do so. Queen would come back to e3, and then rook would take on h4. And then you're going to be having to, you know, back up the bishop somewhere or take right here because, I mean, you're looking at some nasties here. So, but like I said, after we saw bishop to h5, we did see rook back to d8. And then we see bishop down to f3. So we've, you know, cleared our bishop back down to, you know, influence this diagonal a little bit. And now we do see a5. And the position is fairly equal, but, you know, this pawn on the a file is starting to move. So we got queen back to e3. And now white wants to actually trade in the position and, you know, try to sit the rook down here and protect and things like that. So we do have a4. And then we have queen over to a7. And this is actually a pretty crucial part in the game because that actually allows a really, really nice, you know, logical move for black to play. So if you want to go ahead and pause the video and see what black can play to kind of blow the game open, go ahead and do so. Okay, so what we actually see in the game, which, I mean, it's a legitimate move as well, is actually queen to d4. You know, trying to just trade these pieces down and, you know, get into a position where we can start advancing this pawn further. But, you know, there are two different things. There are two different features present in the position. The first feature that's present in the position is the fact that this rook is undefended. The second one is something that you always want to be paying attention to when you do have a passed pawn is controlling the squares that are in front of that pawn. So what you will notice is, you know, what move can you make that will start to control some squares in front of a pawn that's passed and also attack an undefended rook. So if you came up with queen to b2, you would be absolutely correct. This is by far the best move in the position, and it is completely winning. It does place an attack on this rook, so it forces white to try to make some type of defense. I mean, let's just say, like, you know, you move queen over here. You know, you're going to be looking at the rook being attacked, but then you just move it out of the way, and you are prepared now to start pushing this pawn, and it is actually getting very dangerous. And so as you can see, this queen being on this square is protecting all three of these squares. So, I mean, the position is just completely won for black. But like I said, we do see queen coming to d4, and the white queen is not trying to trade. But, you know, we see rook over to b8. We got rook down to d1. And then we just have queen taking h4. And, I mean, we have actually kind of gotten back into like a drawish, you know, type of look in the game and stuff like that in this. But we do see queen over to a7. And this actually allows like a dream case scenario with this rook, allowing it to get down to b2. And that was pretty much the whole reason that rook to b8 was played, so that we can, you know, threaten either, you know, coming down to b1 or coming down to b2 in an effort to try to get this pawn moved. This queen is holding it for the moment. So after we see queen coming to c5, we see queen to b4. And this has a similar idea to it because with queen to b4, we are, you know, protecting this pawn's path to glory. And so it's not the best position for white. So we actually do see queen takes b4, rook takes b4. We see bishop up to d5. And the position is just actually getting sweeter and sweeter for black. You know, we are trying to, you know, do something here to trade. But black says, I'm not trading, man. I'm going to go ahead and just influence this position a little further. I'm going to attack this square. And then you do have some possibilities on this rook coming down. The problem is if you can get this bishop down to this square, you have a free push to a3. You have basically a free push to a2 because the bishop is protecting that square. And then you just literally have a free push to a1. And that is unfortunately what Shakhriyar Mamedyarov does allow in the game. So we do see rook over to c1, just completely missing that rook to b1 is possible. And after we see rook coming to b1, we do see Shak resigning the game. Like I said, basically the idea is this. Rook takes b1, bishop takes b1, and then there's just no way that you can stop this pawn from promoting. This bishop is only influencing this square, and this bishop is also influencing this square. So you are going to have to, at some point, give up this bishop for this pawn here. And then you just have a superior pawn structure against a weak pawn structure, and you just literally have an entire bishop. So if you kind of play this out just a little bit more, you would see king to h2. King would come down to g7 type stuff. You know, you might throw a g4 in there just to be whatever. King comes to f8. King comes to g3. King goes to e7. King goes to f4. And we're starting to just oppose each other's king right here. And then, you know, we see a3. And like I said, this pawn is coming down here without anything. I mean, you can try to push d5. Pawn takes, king takes, bishop to e4. Just deflecting the bishop away. Just being sadistic with it. But that is probably the best way that you can go about doing it. But at some point, like I said, this pawn is coming down here. Whether you give up the bishop or not, or you can successfully deflect it away. Whatever the situation is, this is a completely one type of endgame for black. And, you know, Shaq knows that, so he went ahead and chucked deuces on the game. And something I was noticing is Jan Krzysztof Duda and Magnus Carlsen are playing in the same spot. So I'm not sure how they're playing in the same spot. I'm assuming that everybody is kind of playing this online. So I'm not sure how two people are, you know, in the same place playing at the same time. So like I said, I don't know all the details about the tournament that's going on, but I will be finding out more things as the day goes on and as the days progress. And I'm going to do as much as I can to cover everything. But I appreciate you guys very much, and I'll see you guys next time.